Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America together. Now, here's Jeff.
We'll be hoping over the coming weeks to get back to our great music scene and play some great intro songs, as we were talking with Harvey and others, and our great caller Steve. But we will happen. But in the meantime, we have the Renaissance Man and his own music to let us all enjoy it. He is, of course, a great writer, Democracy Watch News. He is a great contributor to the Jeff Santos Show, now every Friday. Great musician. It's time to talk to MTC, Mark Taylor-Canfield. Happy Friday, Mark. Happy New Year. How are you?
Well, I'm in the recording studio, and, I've been very busy as a journalist the last couple of days covering what's been going on politically. So we have this thing, and here I'll play a little part of it. It goes, "There's some crazy things happening in this town. A lot of bad blood's been going around. Yeah, people gotta get from the waiting for the show. Got cops dressed in riot gear, I think it's about to blow. So, time to love your brother and throw away the gun. You can't help anyone by scaring everyone. We gotta hold the line for democracy. We gotta hold the line for our sanity. I said, if you want to be a good friend of mine, you got to know when to walk and when to hold the line. We got to hold the line. Well, I'm telling you now, brother, that our democracy just said we got to get our act together before it's too late. I see Confederate flags and angry balls flying. Mothers are screaming and children are crying. It's time to love your brother and throw away the gun. You can't build no bridges when you're scaring everyone. We gotta hold the line for democracy. Gotta hold the line for our sanity. If you want to be a good friend of mine, you gotta know when to walk and when to hold the line.
All right, that is the one and only Mark Taylor-Canfield, man. I tell you, we bring you music, brand new music, right out of the recording studio with our good friend MTC. Great stuff, man. Great stuff. I mean, look, if you can get the Bumbershoot going and other things in Seattle in the summertime, that would be awesome. I'd love to be out there myself, man. There's so much to be done, and we got to get live music back in the groove. Hey, how is the vaccine situation going out there?
Because everybody's been talking about what's been going on in Washington, D.C., so I'm not sure what the latest is on that, but I'll check while we're on this call.
Yeah.
I was just I was checking out this other story that you had texted me about with the pro-Trump people trying to storm the governor's mansion. So I want to talk to you about that, because obviously what happened on Wednesday in the nation's capital is, and I was saying this on the air as we were talking with a number of our guests, Ellen Grace and Larry Korb and many others, Governor Dukakis, is that the state capitals have to be aware. And, of course, it happened again in Michigan. It happened in Washington State. I guess it happened down there in Oregon, too. This is the stuff that we got to be very, very careful about, which is why, in my view, not only does Trump need to get arrested and impeached, but we need to also put people well, they got to be prosecuted. We'll keep the word jail out of this terminology now. But, they got to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Look at the Nixon crowd of Mitchell and Alderman and Ehrlichman. They all served time. I think we should be looking at a similar situation here. And, of course, all the people that were involved in the criminal activity themselves by the insurrection, they should also be, arrested and fully prosecuted to the law as well. So this has to, because you cannot have insurrection. You cannot have people, basically allowing a dictatorship to be formed right under our eyes, and the corruption with the police that also needs to be investigated. I see that the police chief at the Capitol Police and the sergeant at arms, both in the House and Senate, have also been fired. That needs to be investigated solely. So, with that, your thoughts about what has all happened into our country? We're 13 days, 12 days away from the end of the Trump
term. Do you think he should be impeached? Do you think he should be removed before the 20th? What's your take on all this, Mark?
Okay, quick update before I answer on the COVID vaccination. So Martin Luther King Jr. County is directing $7 million from the budget to set up mass COVID-19 vaccination sites. So they plan to have these free vaccination sites in hard-hit parts of the county as soon as February 1st. That was says Patty Hayes, the Director of Public Health. Executive for the King County Council, Dal Constantine, said that the county would pay for the sites with its own budget, that they're not waiting for all the usual negotiations and contracts, but they are going to just go for it. The council member, Jean Cole Wells, who was one of my favorites, she's also my representative in the state legislature, she chairs the county's budget committee, and she said that she's really confident at this point that the federal government will provide some COVID relief funding. So they're going to try to get to around 70% of the community, and it's going to take about 6 months, they said, to get up to their full goal of getting 16,000 vaccines a day. So it'll take a little while, but it's headed in the right direction. As far as what was happening in Washington D.C., it did spill over into Washington State, where there have been several pretty violent, actually, confrontations at the state capitol in Washington. Just within the last month or so, with pro-Trump supporters showing up there claiming that the election was stolen, with no evidence, of course. And then just yesterday, we had some issues the day before when people were storming the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. We also had people up here who tried to storm the governor's mansion in Olympia, Washington, where our state capitol is located, and Governor Inslee said that he did have some questions about why there were not more law enforcement officers at the gate in the first place, and why, and this is an answer to a question you posed to me earlier, and why no arrests were made. So he said, these are really legitimate questions, he told the press yesterday and at a press briefing, and he said, we're going to have to get answers to those questions. So here's the deal, is that he hasn't said yet whether he's going to call out the Washington National Guard next week, but the Washington State Legislature is set to have a remote session starting next week. But according to the state constitution, the state legislators in both the House and the Senate have to be in person to approve this vote for a remote session, which means that they have to show up in person on the first day of the session, which is, so they're worried that there might be protests again, and at this point, that's where things stand. They're trying to get ready for a session next week, and they're trying to make sure that there's enough security to make the legislators feel safe to do that, at least for one day, and then after that, they can go into a remote session, which is what our Seattle City Council has been doing. All of the city council meetings that I've interacted with over most of this last year has been online through video conferencing. But yeah, I mean, I've been very busy tweeting all day yesterday and today, and doing news reports with Democracy Watch News and other places about what's going on here. And it really is a direct threat to our democracy. And I doubt, as I said earlier on the Tom Hartman show, I doubt that there's ever been such a crass disrespect for the office of the presidency as we are seeing from this guy in the person of Donald Trump. And I personally, Jeff, don't know how anyone with even an ounce of self-respect can remain a member of the Republican Party when a guy like him is their leader.
I agree. And the Democrats should be willing to sort of pick off whatever good ones there are left. I'm talking about Toomey and Romney and Murkowski and people like that, and bring them along so we can get a bigger majority and we can do big things for the country. And I think that's the time is now to pounce. They a lot of chaos. Apparently, Lindsey Graham and the Trump supporters are at each other's throats. Let them eat each other up. As far as I'm concerned, that they're both pretty sleazy. Let me ask you: do you feel that a number of the Bernie supporters are they, today we had some news that Ron Klain, the chief of staff to Mr. Biden, both in the transition as well as in the next administration coming up on the 20th, has proposed or has retweeted our previous guest to you, Joe Sandberg, who I think should be the next governor of California, goes in the co-founder of Aspiration.com. You can find out more. Go to aspiration.com/revolution. And he's been pushing for a $25 minimum wage for a while. And this, to me, is a really good sign if somebody as close to Biden as his chief of staff, who's known him a long time, is pushing for that. Because I think a lot of Bernie supporters would be very excited to be able to advocate for that across the country, including in a place that's very, very popular for Bernie in Seattle and Seattle Metro. What's your take on that?
Well, two things. One, it is interesting to see even Mitch McConnell having to rebuke the president. I mean, when it gets to the point where even the biggest scoundrels of all can't support you, that shows how much of a scoundrel you must be. As far as the response, by the way, just while I remember this, I really do want to propose a new Hollywood blockbuster movie featuring Donald Trump as Emperor of the USA. And it would be called Nero, and he would just be playing golf as the Capitol burns or whatever.
Yeah. That's fine. Maybe our good comedian friends are going to do this. I'll have to send you something we've seen on the air that we've been sending along to our friends about this guy Johnson and sending some really funny stuff that they've been making. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Whether it's Michael Moore or Oliver Stone or somebody, it's some good stuff.
Satire is much called for at the moment, and I'm trying to do some of that as a journalist. I try to make sure that people realize it's satire, but in answer to your question, a direct answer there is that it was really refreshing to hear Joe Biden on his speech today, his address and his introduction of his nominees for Commerce Secretary, Secretary of Labor, etc. He did make a point of doing what you've been suggesting for quite a while, which is reaching out to the Bernie-crats and saying, I did totally consider Bernie Sanders. We talked about it. I met with him. We both agreed, according to Joe Biden, that he and Bernie both agreed that given the slim numbers in the House and the Senate, that he should hold on to his seat in the Senate and remain somebody that the Democrats can turn to there. And that's why apparently he decided to give the mayor of your neck of the woods the secretariatship, is that a word? I don't know, the post in the cabinet as Secretary of Labor. And I also saw his presentation, and it was nobody was really excited in running for the champagne, but at the same time it was at least relatively competent in terms of running their particular department in the government. At the same time, I personally thought that hearing Joe Biden actually reach out and say that he and Bernie Sanders are going to work together closely, he said, closely. He used that word, so we have to hold him to that. That doesn't mean from, 20 miles away. That means those guys probably in the same room actually talking to each other. And he did support the idea of a national minimum wage, which, of course, progressives like me would like to see it more than that, but that's because I live in expensive Seattle. And then there's, the idea of a lot of other progressive issues that I think he and Bernie can work together on, and it would behoove Joe Biden, as I've said all along, to keep those progressives and democratic socialists in the party and try to form some kind of coalition so that you have some kind of strength against these Republican right-wingers, because they are just ruthless. So you need as many friends as you can get at this point. I would suggest that Joe, cast a wide tent and try to be very respectful of all members of society at this point. There's a point where somebody has to build those bridges, and if he's willing to do it, I think there's a lot of people out there who are hungry for some sense of unity or hungry for some kind of progress and are really tired of the corruption and the selfishness and malfeasance that's been going on in our government. So you can appeal to the majority of people, I think, by just being a straight-up kind of guy and trying to make sure that you follow through with it, with at least most of your promises. He brags a lot about his president, Barack Obama, on some of these issues, but also, I was at the Key Arena when Barack Obama, and I was said, these are all these promises, and he went on for 40 minutes straight, I think, making promises. I don't know how many of them were actually fulfilled, but it would be nice to see some of these progressive causes just become.
No, I think they got to happen. They got to happen, and they got to happen before before the next 6 months, because we got to get off to a good start. I wanted to make a quick call. Then I want to talk to you about music. Let's go to Mark in San Francisco. You're next with Mark Taylor-Canfield. Mark, talk to Mark.
I think what's important and what we're learning is how important the truth is, and I'm talking about people like Limbaugh and Hannity and Tucker Carlson. And the people that are in that signed on to say that this was not a legitimate election in Congress, the 140 of them, the senators that signed on to it. I mean, this has caused this insurrection of these people that are against the government and against Biden. And I think we really need to start getting the truth tellers on the radio and TV, because there's such a lack of them.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And Mark from San Francisco, I think that we need to hear the truth. We need to hear from true leaders, and hopefully Biden is going to rely on Bernie, who's going to be chairman of the Budget Committee in a couple of weeks, and move with progressives like Elizabeth Warren and others. That's what we need, and we need to get these people on my show and other progressive shows, to basically promote a progressive agenda. That has to be done, and that's only one of the ways that it can be done. Mark Taylor-Canfield, I know you're obviously an advocate for progressive media, whether it's radio or TV or internet or what you do. I think this is the way to communicate the message to the masses.
Yeah, we can definitely do a whole segment on this in the future, maybe next week or something, but the whole fact that the right-wing and conservative and business elements were able to buy up so much media through Cumulus and Clear Channel and these other huge conglomerates, and the way that they were able to push and Sinclair Broadcasting, pushing their right-wing agenda, and yet at the same time, as I tried to explain to Silicon Valley billionaire Tom Steyer, that billionaires like him were not investing in supporting progressive media. So a lot of the people that I first worked with, like the Tom Hartmans and the Randy Rhodes and all these other people, they actually lost their network support. And most of those progressive voices went off the air. And whether you personally agreed with them or whatever, it was nice to have a diversity of voices out there. And I think it did help promote progressive causes, and it did help get Barack Obama elected. So why the
and then Obama didn't do much to save it, and Air America and others went down in his first term. So there you go. It's not smart, to say the least. Others survived, of course, through 2012, but it was the Democratic Party and the DNC and other Democratic-leaning organizations have to be aware of the need for progressive voices and the need for platforms for them to get out their message. Otherwise, you're stuck to a couple of cable networks that are limited in their reach, particularly to younger voters and citizens. And I think that that's very, very limited in what they can do. Thank you for the call, Mark. I want to take this next few minutes because this has been a pretty tough week on America. You were out on New Year's Eve, hopefully with a mask and safely, and other people with masks. This is, I think, something we're going to have to learn to live with over the next few months, anyways, until we can get everybody vaccinated. But talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of local music. It was obviously a big night in Seattle on New Year's Eve, was it?
Well, I mean, you kind of had to make it that way. I've had a chance to do some pretty outrageous experimental jams, like on Christmas with some friends, and it really did remind me of Critters Bug, one of my favorite bands from Seattle. If anybody check them out, they're amazing. The lead in that group is a guy named Skerrick, and when he performs, I mean, people come out of the woodwork in Seattle because he's such a grandfather of the whole experimental rock scene here. But I had a chance to do that, and then also there was a free food giveaway thing that was going on, so I performed out in the middle of a baseball field to a bunch of people who were far enough away, you know, it was kind of like playing at a Rolling Stones concert where you kind of see Mick down there, but you're not really very close, so you can't tell exactly what he's wearing, you know, that kind of thing. And then also I was able to reserve one table for 4 people at the local pub, my favorite restaurant and pub down on the waterfront, and they were very gracious and gave us free drinks and were very nice. You know, they love us there and we love them. So it was a good night in terms of, you know, if you wanted to spend time with like just a couple of people, we were able to do that and keep social distancing and kind of keep everything reserved and private. And then did meet with another friend for a short period of time, just with a couple other people. But we ended up at Seattle Center, and that's a place where there's traditionally a light show or fireworks go off from there. But instead they sort of had a virtual light show this year. It was kind of complicated, but you know, there were some corporate sponsors, and they decided to, you know, not really do anything at Seattle Center because they were afraid that people would show up en masse, you know, in groups, which I understand. So what happened instead was that just a few people who, you know, were stalworthy or whatever, or decided to face the elements, went out and went down to Seattle Center. So there was very small groups of people, and they were all kind of in small groups off by themselves, but we ended up performing near the International Fountain. And I don't know if you remember when you were in Seattle, Jeff, but there's a big fountain at Seattle Center, which is one of my favorite places to be in Seattle. It's sort of our version of Central Park, although it's more of a convention-type center where the Key Arena and stuff is. But there's also an International Fountain there. The Mural Amphitheater is there, and the International Fountain is a place where a lot of people gather to hear music. And sometimes musicians actually go down into near where the water is, because there's this big sort of open area that has concrete and has a great reverb. They also give music concerts virtually there. That's been going on for many years, where you go down to the fountain and there's a light show with the fountain that's choreographed to the music. They're playing in all these, you know, it seems like hundreds of speakers around the fountain. So we went down there. There was nothing happening. There was no music at the fountain. The fountain was turned off. The Space Needle did not have any kind of a fireworks or laser light show display like we normally would have on the 4th of July or New Year's. Normally I would be up on Capitol Hill on the top of my friend's sort of penthouse apartment. It's a small one, but it's up at the top of this old 1920s-style building up there, and we can see the Space Needle right from his top deck. So we're usually outside in a patio, and he's a great cook and has all this food for us, and all the local eccentrics who show up, musicians. But this year, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to stay home alone. You know, he didn't want to be around people, which I totally respect and understand. So we did not have that normal party. So what we ended up doing was going down to Seattle Center, and then my friend, good friend, started playing bagpipes, and he's a really good piper, known very well around here, and just totally enchanted people with his bagpiping, and they loved it. So people would sort of come from far off in the distance, and they would drop money in his case and then run off, you know, with their friends again. And they were so gracious, and the same to me. As soon as I started performing my own music out there, you know, people would come from all across the park in Seattle Center just to try to give me money. And I wasn't there to busk. I wasn't asking for money, but people insisted.
That's great. You know, I think that's an important thing that they helped out a local musician, independent musician, and that's a good thing. Mark, unfortunately, we got to run, my friend. Hey, have yourself a great week, great weekend to start with, and all the best, my friend. Take care of yourself. Godspeed. All the best. I want to thank Ron Kreider for producing this broadcast. I want to thank you all for listening, folks. This has been a pretty tough week as an American citizen, as a resident of America, as a supporter of democracy, but we'll be able to overcome this. This is a time, folks, that we need everybody to understand that we're all in this together, and we want to be pushing forward to get help to everybody, whether it's the pandemic and the vaccine, whether it's the $2,000 a month checks. These are things that will help a vast majority of Americans, and if we do this, we can help turn this country around, and whether we can get to a rebuilding of the country with infrastructure and green new jobs, which I think will put a lot of money in the pockets of Americans. I think that can be managed too. Folks, my name is Jeff Santos. Have a great weekend. My time to say I gotta go.